everybody, I'm JD, I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Axonify. So I'm going to try to do something that has never been done before in the history of today at the Learning Technologies Conference. I'm going to try to get through the next 30 minutes without ever mentioning artificial intelligence. Some people are real excited about that, other people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
You should have given me the memo before we started, don't I?
Well, you can mention artificial intelligence. I'm just going to abstain at this point. Tomorrow, we're going to do a whole lot of AI stuff, but that's tomorrow. We're talking about today. So what does Axonify do? So at Axonify, we build technology to enable frontline employees. So that includes learning technology, communication tools, as well as operation tools for people who work in a variety of frontline industries, including retail, grocery, manufacturing, distribution, logistics, hospitality, contact centers, and the like. And a huge part of our story as Axonify is our adaptive learning capability and our data capability. Because what we're able to do by leveraging data in different ways is to fit learning and development opportunities into the day-to-day experience of a very busy, kind of very hectic frontline employee. So that's a bit about what we do. And I like to compare Axonify to my Peloton bike. Is anyone here a Pelotoner? Are you? Wow, one? Are you a Bradley Rose, a Leanne Hainsby fan by chance? Robin Arzón, good choice as well. No one else knows what we're talking about right now, but that's okay. So the reason I like to compare Axonify and our data capabilities to my Peloton bike, screenshot of my Peloton screen, is that my Peloton tracks my progress every day that I ride. It helps me understand how I compare to benchmarks, as well as benchmarks for myself, as well as benchmarks for my peers. It uses my data to inform me as to what other rides I should consider from I over there. They were waving, I'm just waving. And the data is even used to send me special messages when I hit different types of milestones. So I think the Peloton experience and the exercise experience is an interesting kind of comparison to learning and development, especially when it comes to the challenges that we have when it comes to measurement. Because I've been in learning and development for about 20 years at this point. I used to manage L&D and operations at the Walt Disney Company, as well as in Kaplan Higher Education in their contact center environment. So I've witnessed firsthand the struggles that we have as L&D in terms of getting past the basics when it comes to data and measurement. So we like to talk about the classic getting past level 2 issue, right? We can do test scores, we can do attendance, we can do completions, but how do we go beyond that and leverage data to make meaningful decisions and raise meaningful insights about how we can better support people within our workplace? And for me, there's a variety of different reasons why as L&D we struggle with data. So some of this research you see on screen points to indicators like it's difficult to assess people's learning and performance. We might not have access to the right KPIs. We might not have the right technology in order to facilitate the right type of measurement experience. And I firmly believe that if any of the traditional approaches were going to work, they would have worked by now, and we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation again about the data challenges within learning and development. So I feel it's important for us in a workplace that is now being driven increasingly by data for the use of various types of technologies. I'm not saying which one, but data is becoming that much more increasingly important for the people that we support, the people that we work with. It's time for us to evolve our data capabilities beyond the basics and to be able to create a data structure of those photos. A data structure that allows us to get ahead of the game, identify where there are gaps in people's knowledge and capability, and close those gaps before they become problems within our operation. So that's why I'm excited today to share a story of an organization that we work with at Axonify that's taking their data practices to the next level to really identify those meaningful insights and make smarter decisions as an L&D team. So at this point, you'll be very happy to know I'm going to do very little talking because I'm going to pass the microphone over to Maxine Grundy, who is the Global Learning and Support Manager at Sage. So Maxine, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your experience in a contact center environment, very near and dear to my heart, having been a contact center training manager and instructional designer. So can you give us a bit of a background, for those who might not know, about what you do at Sage and the type of audience that you support?
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, Sage provides solutions for businesses, mainly accounting software, payroll software, that kind of thing. So we started out 40 years ago, it's grown and grown over time. And so we've got multiple offices in lots of countries, even lots of offices within countries. So we've gone from a point of view of doing things very localized and very regional, and now we're getting more of a global structure. And so I was brought in to have a look at how can we improve within customer service, increase their colleague expertise, review kind of what the current learning processes are, but also underneath all of that, it was all about improving the business metrics, so first time call resolution, TNPS, and average handling time. And so we started off by looking at what are we doing today. And this might sound quite familiar to everybody, and like what you just mentioned, it was very traditional, so the training would happen at onboarding, and we have tons of product releases. So every time there's a new product, they get training at product release. And then because we work in legislation, if there's some new tax legislation that came out, they'd get training on tax legislation. And it was always just one-off events that happened. And by the time you finish that one, it was like, oh, there's another release, oh, there's another tax change. Especially in the UK, we've had a lot of changes in the UK recently, so that keeps us very busy. And what we found with that was that we weren't really testing the knowledge. So at the end of the training, maybe they'd do a quick quiz, they'd score quite highly, but we didn't really know 1 month down the line, 2 months down the line, how they're doing. We would see it in the business results. If somebody sent first time call resolution, it wasn't great, we'd know whether you were giving the right answer the first time. Or in the TNPS scores, when they would come back and they would score lowly, saying, I did what you said, didn't work. So I was tasked with finding a piece of technology that would help us improve those business metrics, but at the same time increase the colleague expertise.
So when you talk about the types of metrics that you're trying to improve, and you're approaching things from a data-first perspective, how does that work in terms of keeping certain KPIs in mind when you're trying to design and decide on the right type of technology, the right type of solution, and how does this impact the way that you design this?
Yeah. So we'd recently gone through a piece of work where it came to how the customer service colleagues would categorize the call. So we looked at it was called taxonomy, and so we looked at each product and created a call taxonomy. And that allowed us that when a colleague got a call, they would give it a particular subject and a topic. So for example, it might be within the data area and it's data corruption. That was kind of how the call could be categorized. When we came to create the content in Axonify, we matched to the same topics. So we could build it out, so we would have a subject, which would be data, and then we would have a topic, which was data corruption. That then meant we could match together the call stats with the knowledge stats in minutes, rather than trying to work out what's going on. So that's how we built it. And it was a bit of an interesting conversation at the start, because when we looked into getting Axonify, and we were going through the process of design, they said to me, how many topics do you need? And I worked it out, because we've got like over 150 products. Each product needed about 40 topics. And I was like, I think we need about 1,000 topics. And they were like, you can't do that. You're not going to be able to do 1,000 topics. And I was like, but I need 1,000 topics. And I explained it's because I was trying to match to this call taxonomy, and I want to have my results. I want to be able to know that this particular task that they've done matches to that particular topic. I need to come down on that a little bit. We have got a lot of topics in there, but I'm not at 1,000 yet. We're at about 200. So we're on our way, but that's the journey. The way that we kind of narrowed it down was after I'd worked out that I needed all these topics, we then went to the customer data to identify which topic should we start with. So of those 40 topics on the one product, which are the two that are hurting us the most when it comes to first time call resolution, TNPS, average handling time? Highlighted those topics, and we started with 2. And that's where we began.
That's an interesting point to make, because does anyone here get asked to solve all the problems all the time right now? Right? Kind of a thing with learning and development. So how do you get your stakeholders who are asking you to solve every problem and drive every result up to focus on a specific set of metrics or a specific problem to solve? Because like you said, you can put all the training content you want into your learning platform. People only have so much time to consume that content. They can't try to solve every problem either. So how do you get stakeholders to agree with you to say, okay, we'll focus on that problem and worry about the other stuff later?
It was actually quite easy, because I was using the metrics that were hurting them the most. So when we went to have that conversation, I would say, I think it needs to be data corruption. And they said, oh yeah, I agree with you. So actually that conversation was quite easy, because I'd started with the customer data. rather than try to challenge them and then coming to me asking for something different. So it was quite easy to get them to agree to the topics that I've done. But I think there is that speed element that they did want. They're like, yeah, do that. Okay, do everything else at the same time.
Gotcha. So can you paint a bit of a picture for us, for folks who maybe are a little bit less familiar with Axonify, which I believe you refer to as Quizzical,
Yeah.
correct? So what's the experience for a contact center agent like when it comes to their engaging with this content in Quizzical?
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously busy contact center agents. Rule number one of a contact center is don't take people off the phone.
Yeah.
So how do you fit this kind of targeted training on the problems that matter to your stakeholders into that busy day?
Yeah. So that was the biggest challenge that we got. So once we'd decided to do it, we'd looked at it, thought this is really fun. When I went to the resource team, he said, we're launching this new piece of software, it's called Quizzical. I only need 5 minutes of their day. And I'm like, oh, where are we going to put 5 minutes? I could add it on the end of lunch. We could add it on the end of the morning meeting. We could do it before they leave, but oh, maybe they're going to find the time. And we must have had probably 3 meetings going around in circles about where were we going to find this 5 minutes, because they didn't think people would choose to do it in their own time. Because whenever they've said to customer service colleagues before, oh, could you just do this task for me? The first thing they say is, am I getting some time off the phone? So they thought they're not going to go for it. What we found in the pilot is we did 2 tests. We did one group of people where we gave them some time offline, and then we did a different group where we didn't give them any time offline, and they had to find it in their day. And surprisingly, the people that had to find it in their day were more engaged than the people who had the 5 minutes assigned to them. And we've also found that people voluntarily chose to do it on the weekend. So we've got people who are logging on a weekend to do it. And just in case people don't know what Axonify is, or Quizzical as I call it, agents will log in every day and they answer 3 questions. And when they answer the question, it asks them how confident they are. So it's low, medium, or high. And that's all you're asking them to do. It's just 3 questions a day. In the background, I am going to use the word you don't want me to use. AI. It will notice what they're getting right, what they're getting wrong, what they've got high confidence on, what they've got low confidence on, and it will tailor the questions to that person based off what they need. And at the same time as doing that, you play a game. So that's why they log in on the weekend. It's for the game. I don't think they're logging in for the questions. But the game is a route to the question. So you play a game, the question pops up. Play a bit more of the game, the question pops up.
And I mentioned I was an Axonify customer in a contact center as well. And I had the same experience when it came to engagement. And my team's in the US, so we're not allowed to do any type of training off the clock in that setting. But when I looked at the data in Axonify and I saw participation numbers, I saw I had contact center agents who were coming in 30 out of 30 days every month, which meant they were logging in on their time off, which is an interesting problem to have.
Okay.
Because how many times in learning and development do you have the problem that people are doing too much training? So you don't want to stop them, right? Because something's going well here, but I didn't tell HR about that because they would ask questions. So instead I actually called the agents in and said, why? Because I'm not asking you to do something every day. And what was interesting was they were telling me different reasons. Some people said, I just got to get 100%. I want to get all the questions right. That's who I am. Some people wanted to earn points because we had rewards in the system. Some people just said, it helps me do my job better. And the truth was, no matter what reason they gave me, they were all getting better. They were all learning. And that's what really taught me that motivation idea and that ability to give them autonomy is key. Because if you're telling people to do something, we kind of don't like that as humans. So helping people find their own value proposition was a key part of this kind of continuous learning story for me. It sounds like it was similar from the team at Sage.
Yeah.
So when we spoke to the types of data that you're collecting, so you're collecting what people know every day, you're collecting how confident people are in that knowledge. I'm curious, what are some of the ways you're using data differently now that you're collecting data more frequently, you're training people in the contact center more frequently? How has that changed how you use data as an L&D team? And what kind of results are you getting from that use of data?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and again, a lot of people might resonate with this, is I can now got data that backs why I'm saying these people need training on X. Because you can have that conversation with the managers and they'll go, oh no, I don't think it's that. I think it's this other problem. And then you end up in a bit of a battle about, well, it's not that, it's this. So now we've got school, because I've set my topics up aligned to the 4 categories, I can see here that data is an issue, remote data access is an issue. And I can say you've got 5 people in your team that are below 80% on that section. And the other I think one of the byproducts which we weren't expecting to happen is also with the questions, after they've answered it, it gets an explanation, and we've linked to our knowledge base articles. So every question goes to our knowledge base. Through that whole exercise, we've ended up updating lots of articles, because it turned out the articles were out of date. So we were telling people the wrong information, and we wouldn't have picked that up had we not started using Axonify. But also we're finding out some of our longest tenured people, they've been saying high confidence, high confidence, high confidence, and they were completely incorrect. And so we know, because they've been there the longest, they thought they knew the right answers. And again, they've been saying that to customers. So those were 2 really good things that we got really quickly within the first 2 weeks of launching, those things, definitely. But then I think the other kind of opposite side is, so when we've started, we've looked at what is the current data, where do we need to start. Now, we've got a system called speech and text, so I don't know if anybody else uses this, but it will basically listen to customer calls, and it will pull out the sentiment topics that people are calling about to tell you what is happening in customer calls. So it was highlighted through speech and text that we had an issue. They came straight to the team and said, can you add these extra questions into my support, because we've highlighted there's an issue. Did the questions, people were answering those for 2 weeks, and we noticed straight away that all of the sort of negative sentiment changed, the scores went back up. So that whole process, from realising we had an issue to getting questions in the system, was about 3 hours. Previously, that would have taken about 3 weeks, because people would have had to go listen to calls, listen to multiple calls, because that technology listens to all your calls. So listen to lots of calls to work out what it was, then come and tell us what we think the question should be to add them into the system. So that's been a really quick way for us to be able to get more out of it.
So many great points there, especially the idea that people constantly, they see an issue in the business, they come to us and say, we need training on, and oftentimes a big part of the challenge in our data story is that we don't have the evidence to back up our argument that no, you don't need training on. We know in this room, because we're really cool and we hang out at learning and development conferences for fun, right? We're a different type of people in learning and development, but we know that it's usually not training that is going to be the solution to this performance-related issue. But we're usually just coming at it saying, I'm the expert in this stuff, you should believe me. That doesn't always work all the time, especially with stakeholders you haven't built a lot of trust with. So the ability to come to people with more rigorous data that's collected more often and say, and I have the same experience as an Axonify user, no, they know this. I know for a fact that they know this. Something else is wrong. Let's have a conversation about what might actually be causing the problem in performance, instead of, oh yeah, we have to go build a course because someone told me to. Nothing changed, but we still spent tons of time and money and resources that we don't have chasing problems that don't exist. Meanwhile, there are things we could be addressing, like you said, the real problems that are identified by your call listening tool, and go get them with our solutions instead. So I think that's a huge point in the story to say, how do we get to have that conversation? It requires us collecting different types of data more frequently, and that's really why we designed Axonify the way that we did, and how we fit it into even the busy contact center agent day. It's not just about offering more learning experiences, it's triggering more data collection for L&D so we can have better conversations and get more agile in our solutions. I don't know if you have anything to add to my rant right there, but is that what you're doing?
Summed up beautifully.
Thank you for the judgment. So for everyone here is working in a different industry, has different tools, has different types of KPIs that they're measuring. So what would you suggest for people who are looking to make these type of improvements, get more agile in their learning and development practices, and get to where you really started, which was connecting the dots between the work you're doing in L&D and the outcomes the business needs to see, which is going to get to this point, which is justifying the value of L&D, measuring the impact of what we're doing. How do you get started? Because I think anyone work in a contact center? A couple of folks. So we have the benefit in contact centers, you just got a lot of data, and it's a data-driven operation. How do people go about starting to have these conversations to get to this type of data so they can start going down a similar path?
Yeah. So I think the first thing would be to identify for that stakeholder you're trying to convince that this is the way forward, what is the most important metric to them? And so for us, that was first time fall resolution, TNPS, average handling time. I feel like I say that in my sleep. So that was the thing that was our focus. So I knew if I could link it back to that and show them how I'm going to influence those measures, they would be more interested. And we have seen improvements in all of those things as well, so they're using it. So I think that's probably the first thing, is identify what is the thing that they're most interested in. But then secondly, start small. Because I made that joke before about how I had 1,000 topics. And one day we will have 1,000 topics in there. But yeah, find out what is a critical business need today. What is that one piece of knowledge that people are getting wrong that's affecting things? Choose that to start, and then you will see the improvements. Now, it's going to take a little bit of time because they're only getting 3 questions a day. You can't teach them everything fast. So it does take a few months till you actually start to really get information back out. But like I said, in a couple of weeks, straight away, we saw improvements spike up because we had incorrect articles and overconfident people.
So how many folks here, do you know what's the most important metric that your stakeholders, if you could move that metric, they would buy into what you're trying to do? How many people know what that metric is? The speaker system does not know. But I think, again, a great reiteration of that being the point of where the story begins is understanding our stakeholders, building that relationship so we, one, know what they're trying to achieve, what those key data points are, and then two, that earns us the ability to get to that data. Because I know that's another challenge a lot of people in L&D and HR have, is we might even know what the data is that we want, the metrics we want to use. Are they willing to give us access to and maybe do the work necessary to provide access to that kind of data, which is often a stopping point for L&D. So the recommendation I make there is, like you said, starting small. And for me, starting small was actually a little bit different. I did a lot of work around knowledge management while I was implementing Axonify, similar to what you were doing and updating your articles. And the first thing I did, I plugged Google Analytics into my knowledge base because it helped me and my L&D team start thinking about data differently. Because instead of, people were asking me, well, who's reading what articles? And I said, I don't really care who is reading which articles. I care what they're searching for, why they're searching for that information, and what they're not finding, because that allows me to ask the question, are we missing something, right? Are we not documenting certain processes that people are constantly looking for? Or if people are constantly going back to the same topics, should we introduce training? Is that a good idea for Axonify reinforcement? Because people seem to not be recalling and remembering what they consistently need. Are we coming at it from the wrong perspective? So I think that idea of starting small with our data practices, really identifying what problem can we solve by handling data a little bit differently, looking at it through a different lens, is a critical part of getting to the point where you are, which is having these meaningful conversations about changing business metrics through 5 minutes of training a day, and really building that trust, that relationship, and that buy-in from your stakeholder team. So we have a couple minutes left. So before I open the floor to see if there are any questions or things we can specifically address about Maxine's work with Sage, any final thoughts or words that you would, words of wisdom that you would convey when it comes to measurement and the data challenge in L&D?
I think it's the, well, I think like I just said, start small. Find that one thing that you want to make a difference on them and start there. And don't worry that people won't love it, because like I say, everyone is totally engaged. They're logging on the weekend out. People will log on 1 minute past midnight just so they can be the top of the leaderboard. So when other people come into the office, they can stay along at the top. So the engagement is easy. It's the working out where to start that's probably a challenge.